Hey, don't look at my think bits. Hey guys, what's going on? Today we're going to be installing a pretty basic fuel setup on the RB25 and the Stagea behind me. We're going to be doing injectors, rail, fuel pressure regulator and flex fuel sensor. There's a lot to get through in this video, so strap yourselves in and enjoy. So I'm just going to have a quick look at all the bits and pieces here. Then we're going to go buy some lines and some fittings and put it all together. So 1000cc injectors. We've got the flow mashing chart to go with that. Spaces for the rail. The injector harnesses. So that goes from the RB25 Stagea injector plugs to the Bosch plugs. Haltech flex fuel sensor. Pretty self-explanatory. That's the fittings for the flex fuel sensor. Turbosmart FPR 800, as well as the gauge to go with that. I'll grab that out in a second. Cool, well, that one's done. That was easy. Walbro 460, pretty self-explanatory. That one goes in the tank. And a billet fuel rail. So I'm really excited about this because I finally get to see what this is going to look like. Wow. Look at that, all the hardware's all neat and tidy in these little foam holes. That's so cool. Alright, so quick rundown. Fuel rail has to come out. So in the fuel rail is 6 injectors, so that's all got to come out. That's the stock fuel pressure regulator, which I'm replacing with a bigger, better aftermarket one that's probably going to sit over here instead. So replacing the rail, the injectors, fuel pressure regulator. I'm going to try and tuck the wires underneath the manifold as well, so they come up from underneath if there's enough room, just to kind of clean up the engine bay a little bit. And underneath the fuel pressure regulator, I'm hopefully going to be able to mount the flex fuel sensor as well, if there's enough space, but I don't know if there is. On a friend's car, he actually mounted it right down the bottom next to the steering column, but I don't know if I'm that game, so we'll see how we go for time and space and get to it. That's the pressure reference line off the fuel pressure regulator there, out of the way. A couple of 12mm bolts holding the fuel rail to the intake manifold there, so we'll go and take those off. There's such long bolts, they take forever to get out. That's the fuel rail unbolted. Just pull the PCV out of the way. There we go. So that'll just make it a bit easier. Gives it the room. Chuck that over there. Alright, so now the fuel rail just lifts up like that. So now I'm going to unplug each injector. So the injector harness is what it is. We're not going to touch that really. We're going to reuse all of that same stuff. But the new injectors that I've got have a little adapter plug that sits on the end of that. So we use this same loom again, but there's a little adapter that's about a couple of inches long that sticks off that'll plug into the new injectors. Cool. No pressure in the rail because it's been off for a few days, so that's cool. So that's the feed line off, and this is the return line. We're going to take off in the same way. Now there could be fuel in the rail too. I would say there would be a little bit. It's okay. So what we'll do is once I pull this off, we'll go dump this outside and let any fuel run out of it. So there you go, one fuel rail, stock RB25 with the purple injectors. So because I'm reusing the stock lines up to this point, that all stays the same basically. So my new stuff will plug into those lines there. I will at some point get a different fuel filter as well, but for right now this will get me up and running, probably get me to the dyno, and we'll see what we can make with that setup. It's already got like little adapters and whatever the little O-rings are and stuff in there, so next step is to go ahead and remove all those so that when I install the new set of like adapters and O-rings and all that sort of stuff, they're not still in the way. Go, so that's all 3 pieces out of that one. This is going to be a time lapse for sure. So my cylinder 6 injector, like O-rings and stuff, or cylinder 6 when I got the car was misfiring really badly. It turned out the injector was stuck open permanently, so it was just constantly pouring fuel into cylinder 6. That's the O-ring that came off that one there, which you can see the difference between that and that. It's just completely worn away. I don't know why. So I'm feeling very good about replacing all this stuff, because it probably should have been done a long time ago, but obviously without being able to change the ECU until now, I couldn't run any other kind of injectors. So yeah, pretty happy to replace that stuff. So here is the new rail. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. The really cool thing about this kit that I didn't know at the time when I bought it is it comes with like all the little AN fittings and adapters and stuff. So I haven't tightened everything down, but that's just to get the positioning right. And if I look around here, I can indeed see that the bolt holes line up there and at the far end. So that's roughly how it's going to look, which is pretty neat. This rail has a port on each end, plus a port for fuel return in the middle if you end up using both of the end ports as inputs. I'm not doing that. I'm sticking to the same, like the stock input-output method from the stock RB25. So input at this end and output at this end back to the fuel pressure regulator. You know, it's a -8, comes with a -6 to -8 converter adapter thing, which is awesome. So there, -8, -6. Let's grab the injectors out, we'll put them into the rail, and that will allow me to figure out how high the rail will sit off the manifold, which will then determine which set of spacers, or risers I guess you call them, I'm going to have to use to bolt everything down. So there's that size riser there, and there's also a shorter one that comes in the kit. So depending on which size injectors you use, you'd use either the taller or the shorter riser.
Oh, there's actually a shorter one.
Oh, there's actually there's 3 sets of risers that come with it. So you got your small, your medium, and your large, I guess, depending on what size injectors you use. All right, so we're gonna put some silicone grease on bits and pieces. I already did put a little bit on the O-rings from that first lot that went onto the fuel rail. So this is the injector adapter into the manifold. So this replaces all those ones that I pulled out previously. And yeah, I mean, it just looks, it's nice and black and fresh, and it's got nice new O-rings, so definitely want to use that. So then that's the Bosch injector, 1000cc, and it came with a little cap. So there's all these O-rings everywhere. So everywhere there's an O-ring in this system, I've got to throw a little bit of the silicone lubricant on there. And chuck some more on there. So I don't have a lot of this stuff. I mean, that tube, it might be enough. I mean, I'm sure it's enough. That's what they gave me. And so this top O-ring is what presses into the fuel rail itself. So I'll go ahead, make sure everything's nicely lubed up. All right, so that's the Bosch injector ready to go in. It's got silicone lube on every O-ring there, as well as the internal O-ring in that little cap. So that just presses together. And then, so the top O-ring's lubed up. So you just go ahead and press that into the rail, like so. And that one's ready to go in. And so the bottom O-ring has some silicone on it already, and that should just press into the adapter that we've already placed in the manifold. So I'm going to go ahead now and prep the rest of the injectors. 3, 4, 5. Cool, so that's the injectors all put together and lubed up, ready to go. Now it's time for the manifold adapters. So that sits in the manifold like that. That sits in the manifold that way, and the injector basically plugs into there. So we've got to lube up the little O-ring around the edge there as well. Okay, so that's everything ready to go. Injectors all put together and lubed up, the top and the bottom, and manifold adapters all lubed up and ready to go. Let's go put them in the car. There we go. This is going to be so much better than the stock setup in this Freddy manifold, because none of the stock injectors fit into that manifold that tightly or that perfectly. Like, the amount of force to push that in seems unreasonable, but it's like it's going to seal really well. I feel like the stock injectors never actually sealed properly in that manifold for whatever reason, and I feel like that's given me issues in the time that I've owned this car. So I'm really excited to see how this runs now. Oh, look at it. There you go.
Such a satisfying click.
It is, eh? So you can see that port number 6 looks like it's been leaking. It's had like a bit of fuel vapor or something leaking from it. And like the dirt's kind of clung to that and made this like weird fuely dirty residue. So hopefully having something like this sealing properly in it will stop that kind of thing happening again. So that's all the injectors into the manifold adapters now, and we're just going to try and tuck the injector wiring loom underneath the manifold and just poke up here just so it's a bit tidier. So there we go, we've managed to tuck the injector harness under the manifold. And I think that looks way neater. Not going to have the wiring loom and stuff hanging over the top of the fuel rail. So we've got the wiring loom for the injectors under the manifold. We've got the injectors in there. I guess all that's left to do now is put the fuel rail on top of that, and hopefully... Okay, so before we get too much further, I also want to put the... So we put the spacer here on the manifold, and we've got one of the brackets that holds the fuel rail in place. Okay, so time to put the fuel rail on. Hopefully it clicks into place on the injectors and we can line everything up. I don't know. Oh yeah, that side's in. Oh, there you go. Oh, that's a satisfying click. It's like made to work perfectly together. Like everything's got a satisfying click when you click it in there. Like that. I don't know if that picked it up, but then even to release the Bosch side of it, it's just got this little metal clip that you just push on to release it. It's like so perfect. Mad. I feel like I want to put black heat shrink around this.
Yeah.
Or black tape.
Yeah, just to black it out.
Yeah, I'll probably do that. I'll probably do like black tape and just wrap it.
Oh yeah, and then put it back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. That looks so neat.
Yeah. Alright, so because we've removed the factory fuel pressure regulator, we've got the new Turbosmart one ready to go on. Cute little gauge on there as well, so we know what sort of pressure we're running. I think we have to set it to 43 psi as the base pressure, and that will rise as vacuum's applied to the little vacuum nipple on top from the pressure hose that's going to come out of the manifold and onto there. So I've just set up the bracket and put it on there. Put the gauge on the front there. I'm just in the middle of trying to find a bolt to secure that to the strut tower, and then I've got these little fittings. So the fittings in here are 1/8 NPT. So that's the feed into the FPR, and then coming out of the FPR, same sort of thing. It's just going to drop straight down out of the FPR and go into the flex sensor or to the return line, depending on how I route it. So we'll go ahead and put some thread tape around those and start getting that into the car now as well. So because I'm putting on an aftermarket fuel regulator that's going to sit up here on the strut tower, I can actually get rid of this is a fuel dampener, which don't know if you can really see it there, but so as the fuel returns from the fuel rail and the pressure regulator, this just kind of helps to smooth out the flow through the system. So going to unbolt that, throw that in the bin, and then use the return line from that straight off the flex fuel sensor. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out now. Whew. That's the 98. That's about where I want to. Think that'll look pretty good there. Is that too high? No, that's probably fine, hey? Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Factory Nissan bolts in factory Nissan holes. Keeping it stock, officer.
Yeah, that's better.
No, 10, it's an 11. It's an 11 mil.
11.
What a dumb size, like, it's just... Of course it's an 11 mil, like, why not?
It's like, let's make this bolt different size. Oh, and put it here where they can't reach it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I can't do it anymore because it's hitting on the actual regulator now, so... Hey, don't look at my pink bits. Nothing wrong with pink thread tape. Alright. That's all pretty tight.
Is that normal?
No. Thanks for... I don't know if I like that there. Maybe we should go down one. Should I go down to the next one down?
The pink bits?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's something that like grabs your attention anyway, if you put a look at it. But as far as function goes, it doesn't matter where it sits.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So there's the Haltech flex sensor, and so I've got on the end of each of these barbs is that's a -6 male fitting. So these barbs come in a pack from Haltech for pretty cheap, and so it's just the right size to go on there, and it's just easy to use. So from there, I'm just going to put a -6 to a 5/16 barb, and so that'll just go straight back into the stock fuel line. So what I've done with the flex fuel is, it's really hard to see down there, but there's the flex fuel sensor, just mounted to the side of the stock tower. And I've got a right angle feed for the flex sensor that's sticking straight up. So I've just run a new hose down there, and I just have to pop that on now. It's way too long. So there you go, that's out the bottom of the FPR, down there to the flex sensor. See what I mean? Like it just pushes it up.
Yeah.
A little bit. I cut it a bit shorter and probably solve it. That's alright. It's looking pretty tidy for what it is.
I mean, even if you cut it short, it's still...
So as a result of spending all this time looking at this manifold and everything, I kind of decided to strip the paint because it was looking pretty ratty. So yeah, just halfway through this fuel install video, just decided to start stripping the paint from it. It's yeah, not going too badly. Okay, so it's a couple of days later. It took me ages to figure out what I was going to do in this situation. I've never done any kind of paint stripping or really any paint work before. But as I was kind of going through the process of putting that fuel rail on, the previous finish of that manifold was kind of getting to me. It was like painted black, but it had like all chips and stuff taken out of it. So I just figured before I put the rail on, I was going to fix that up a little bit, and it just kind of snowballed. Yeah, and so I just kind of ended up stripping as much of the paint off the manifold as I could without removing the manifold. I'm pretty happy with it, to be honest, because it looks nice. You know, at least it's all one color now for the most part. For the parts you can see, there's still a bit of like, there's still some speckles and stuff there, but I think that's as good as I'm going to get without actually pulling the manifold off. So for now, that'll do. So let's go ahead and get the rail bolted down again and get all the lines hooked up. So after a lot of messing around, finally have all the injectors in, all the new pigtails on, rail is on the injectors and also bolted down to the brackets, holding it to the manifold, which is looking really good now. So that's cool. So the next thing is to set up these fuel lines. So I've taken the fuel filter bracket and I've mounted it to the chassis down there. And so that's the way the fuel filter is going to be sitting. All right, this part was really hard to do while trying to film, so I just kind of couldn't, but I'll explain. So that's my fuel feed line that comes from the tank. That's going down to where I've got the fuel filter now, and out the back of that, you can see that hose comes up the back of the manifold and into the fuel rail. So that's into the feed side of the fuel rail. The fuel will then travel along the rail, come out the return. And at the moment, that's just a loose hose at the moment. So the next part that I have to do is get the return line hooked up. So the return line is going to go through the FPR regulator that I'm going to mount up here, as well as the flex fuel sensor, and then go back down out the return line. So things are going to start getting pretty cramped in here in terms of space, but I don't really have a choice. So yeah, I'm going to do that now. So I'm just waiting on another barb to arrive in the mail. For now, I can probably just do that. It's a bit annoying, but eventually what I want it to do is come up and then come alongside it and then just come on a right angle like that. Sort of thing, so. But for right now, I don't have the right barb, so it's gonna jam it on the back there. All right, so I've got to get just a little hose clamp on that line. So I'll do that now. One of these bad boys. That, and then so the flex fuel sensor has a 90-degree angle on the end of it, and it's just going to hopefully drop down into that return line back to the tank. So that's what I've come up with for the flex fuel sensor. That bracket bolts into the bottom of the strut tower, and so that line comes down from the FPR through the flex sensor and then out of that 90-degree angle down into the return line that goes back to the tank. That's the flex fuel there with the return line off the end of the flex fuel back into the return line that goes to the tank. So then all we have to do now is hook up this end of the flex fuel sensor to the bottom of the FPR. There we go. It's pretty straightforward. Alright, so everything's tightened up. All that's left to do is reconnect the battery, turn the key, and hopefully there's no leaks. Here we go. I'm in reverse. I can't hear any leaks. Cool. What I might do is wait for everything to dry out, because I obviously spilt a fair bit of fuel while I was taking the lines off and everything. So what I might do is wait for everything to dry out and come back, try again once everything's dry, and then I'll be able to see if there's any fresh leaks. Okay, so we're in the car now. There's two things we have to change. The first thing that we have to change is... Boy, that flicker's really annoying. Alright, so the first thing we have to change is flow. So we have to set that to the size of the new injectors. At the moment it says 370 cc's. We've now got 1000 cc injectors, so we're going to go ahead and update that. So we'll just tap page up a few times. And we'll get to 1000 cc's. And there we go. So the other setting that we want to change is the injector dead time. Now, this is currently set for stock 370cc, like Nissan, whatever they are, Jex injectors or whatever they are. Quite different to what we need for these aftermarket Bosch injectors. So I've got here, you know, the manufacturer, or in this case the supplier, you know, quite often we'll be able to supply you with the correct dead times. So you can see there's settings for 8 volts, 10 volts, 12 volts, etc. And so we're going for 43.5 psi fuel pressure. So we're just going to go ahead and pop in those settings for now, and that should get us starting idling and you know, be able to cruise it to get it tuned. So yeah, we'll go ahead and put those values in now, and hopefully we can get to start. So 8 volts, 2.33, 10 volts, 1.86, etc, etc. 12 volts, 14 volts. I'd probably guess that that's kind of, you know, the 12 to 14 volt range would arguably be, you know, the most important of all those ranges, because that's where your car's going to spend all its time. That's just a complete guess. I don't really know how it works, but I mean, it makes sense. If you're at 12 volts, you can have a certain dead time. 14 volts, you got a certain dead time, and I guess it kind of interpolates between the two values. For, you know, if you're at 13.8 volts, it'll work out, you know, a little bit more than 1.12, but a fair bit less than 1.46. So yeah, I suppose. All right, so everything matches up to that. So I think we might be ready to try and fire this baby up. Let's go. Ooh. Let's try again. Oh, it's not. Oh, I've got no throttle cable. So, in the process of changing all the fuel system around, I unplugged the throttle cable to have more room. Alright, I didn't film that because that gave me a stroke, but yeah, that seems to be working now. Alrighty, let's boogie. Alrighty, here we go. Now we have the throttle hooked up. Hopefully. Let's go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. Oh yeah? No leaks that I can see yet. Listen to that, she sounds so good. And lots of condensation, hasn't been started for a few weeks. Just sitting there. So now what we have to check is what our air fuel ratio looks like. So we have a bit of a look here, and this is the smoothest this car has ever run. There's no like bouncing or like weird idle. Like, this is solid. That's cool. It's idling at 1,000, which is a little bit high, but it is very cold. It's still only at 48 degrees. You can see here, yeah, it's running nice and rich. 13 to 13.5, give or take. If I just tap the throttle a little bit, you see that rush of air makes it go lean for a second and then suddenly really rich. For whatever reason, once my coolant temperature hit about 50 degrees, I guess there's like a cold start enrichment that turns off, and it started running like absolute garbage, and it just, like, it was 17 to 20, 21 AFR, which is terrible. It was sputtering and dying. I checked all my compensations and stuff. I couldn't really find anything else, but I went in and changed the dead times. I increased the dead times a little bit from what I found before, and I noticed that the AFR was slowly dropping down to about the target range. So I just kept increasing the dead time for the cell that I'm in at the moment, and until I could get it close to the target AFR. So I guess that's what we're going to keep doing and fiddling around with that. And you can see if I reduce the dead time significantly, you see the AFR drops right off. So I'll increase that again, and you'll see you can even hear like the engine note changes too. So that's me adjusting the dead time for the injectors. I think 1.275 seems to get me pretty close to the target AFR of 13.6. I might take it for a bit of a sedate drive around the block and see if I can get the coolant temp to come up, because it's just sitting there. It's going down. I'm sitting idle and it's going down. What the hell? Phew! Well, there it is. New injector setup, running perfectly. This dickhead gets out of the way. Sounds good. Feels good. No weird noises or anything yet. Yet. So I've got the laptop hooked up again. Looks like it's idling alright, but it looks like whenever I tip in the throttle, there's quite a big lean rush. See, so it kind of pops right up to about 16 or 17 on the AFR, and then once I start cruising again, it chills out and settles down to about 12 to 14, which is kind of on the rich side as well. So I think I know how to change that. There's some settings to do with throttle tip-in and transient throttle response. So I think that might have something to do with that. But I mean, overall, it's not misfiring. You know, it's sounding pretty smooth for the most part. Let's try and get some boost into it, and we'll see. Yeah, so I put my foot down and it jumped up to 15 and then ended up at about 10. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. It's definitely within like a safe kind of ballpark. You know, it's kind of sitting between 12 and 15-ish for the most part, which, you know, if I'm just puttering around, it's definitely not causing any damage, so I'm pretty happy with that. But it definitely sounds nicer than I was expecting, you know. I was expecting like constant misses and weird lean pops and all that sort of stuff, but it feels strong. It feels like it's running really well. It feels very smooth. So I think you know, it probably won't take much of an adjustment by me, hopefully, to even get it just running really well on the street before I take it to get a proper dyno tune. But we'll see. I'm pretty happy with this. I'm pretty impressed. Well, there you go. I'm pretty happy with that. That actually got up and running a lot easier than I thought it would. Had to fiddle around with some of the settings, but I kind of knew that would happen. So I think that's about it for this video, guys. Got the injectors in, got the rail in, got everything hooked up, and managed to start it, which I'm stoked with. So that's one more thing that I can tick off the list for things to do before tune time. So I don't think there's too much left to go. I might need to get a set of coil packs. And if I do, I'll do another video of that. But yeah, she's up and running on 1000cc injectors. Still have to wire in the actual flex fuel sensor and a couple of other bits and pieces. But I mean, the fact is I could probably drive this to my tuner now. So as always guys, thanks for watching this video, it really means a lot. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, join us for a cruise or a meet or something, and yeah, we'll see you in the next video.